Hey guys, in today's video I have a special guest, Chris, who was a former Customs and DEA agent and now retired in the Philippines. Stick around. Okay, so everyone, we have Chris here, and Chris, welcome. I appreciate you coming onto the video today, onto the channel. And so Chris, how long have you been retired here in the Philippines?
I've been here approximately 8 years.
8 years, okay. And by the way, we're sitting out here in Chris's backyard, and he's got you got chickens and everything here. So a little bit of a province life, yeah. So you were a former DEA agent and customs agent. And can you give us a little background? How did you get into that?
Well, I got a scholarship to go to ROTC scholarship to go to college, and in 1975, and I graduated from the University of South Florida in Tampa, and I was ready to accept my commission in the Army as a second lieutenant, and I was recruited out of that to go to work for my mother agency in the federal government, the United States Customs Service, which now has been morphed into Immigration and Customs, also known as Homeland Security. But originally, I started out with them as a patrol officer, as a customs patrol officer. And then I worked my way up and became a special agent. And my first primary job was that as a patrol officer, working immigration, working the docks, working smuggling, and that sort of thing. When I was promoted, I went into one of the several groups that we have in customs. Some of those groups they have a marine smuggling group, they have an air smuggling group, they have a technology group, or what we call a strategic group, which works strategic investigations involving everything from technology to arms and weapons, international arms and weapons. Anything that comes across the border, which would be in violation of the Trading with the Enemy Act.
And so where did you spend most of your time as a Customs and DEA agent?
I started off in Tampa, Florida, and I ended up TDY, or temporary duty, for a couple of years in Miami. And that's where I worked what's called Operation Greenback. And Operation Greenback was the precursor to all the money laundering investigations that grew out of the Cocaine Cowboys, that grew out of the shootout at Dadeland Mall, that grew out of the godmother who ran all the dope in Miami at that time, Giselle Blanco. And because I'm a Spanish speaker, I ended up attached to that group, which consisted of IRS agents, DEA agents, and customs agents. I was also one of 60 customs agents nationwide who were cross-designated as a DEA agent, so I could actually work what's called USC Title 21 investigations involving domestic drugs and narcotics and money laundering.
Now, you had mentioned that you spent a lot of time in Colombia. At what point did you head down to Colombia?
After I left government service, I ended up in Colombia because I was familiar with Colombia. I went through a divorce, and I ended up in Colombia mainly because my brother was there, and we lived there together for about 5 years after I had left the government.
And what time frame was that? Was that in the 80s, the 90s?
That was more into the late 90s. I retired after 22 and a half years with a pretty decent pension, and I'm very lucky that I was able to retire. Some of the guys I worked with unfortunately didn't make it.
Okay. And I know you've got experience living in Colombia and now in the Philippines. How long have you been in the Philippines?
Just about 8 years, I think. 8. I'm losing track, but yeah, about 8 years.
8 years. And so the time that you've lived in the Philippines, what cities have you lived in?
I lived in Angeles City to begin with, and in Pampanga, and then I came here after seeing a video by another guy that has a YouTube channel, and I came here because it looked so far away from all the stuff I hated in Angeles City. Okay,
so your time in Angeles, you weren't that impressed with Angeles?
Well, it's there's a time in every man's life where you want to go to the bars and have fun with the girls and all that sort of thing, and then but I'm really more of a family guy, and I met a wonderful woman, and she was a widow. She is a widow, and we got married, and I've kind of adopted her children, and I'm really happy here. Really happy here in the province. I have great family, and my brother's married to my wife's sister. So it's a unique situation.
Now, with your brother being married to your wife's sister, where does he live?
He lives in Brazil. He's living in Florianopolis, Brazil.
Interesting.
He's a pilot with a major airline, and he's going to be retiring in April. And then he's going to come here once the craziness with this stupid Chinese virus is over, and it's relaxed, and he can come here. He'll come here and build a home and live with us.
And how much time did you spend living in Colombia?
Total about 10 years.
Okay. And what are some of the cities that you experienced living in Colombia?
Well, I worked out of Bogota, out of the embassy there. I lived my former wife. If I could say hello to her and my friends in Colombia. A todos mis amigos colombianos, mi ex esposa Anita y su esposo Carlito, es que muchos saludos, mucho amor, con todo respeto, y a mí me gustaría verte algún día, pero pues me voy a quedarme acá, pero ustedes saben que yo amo Colombia con todo mi corazón, y ojalá que te vas a entender cómo yo trabajaba en Colombia para su país.
Okay. So, your ex-wife is Colombian, and where did you meet her at? Did you meet her in Colombia, or was it in the States?
I met her at the mall in Cali.
Okay.
I was speaking Spanish, and she started talking to me in English, and we just hit it off. She's still a good friend of mine, and her husband's a great guy. Her new husband's a great guy, and I'm friends with him. So that's how it all went down.
So what are some of the cities that you lived in Colombia?
I've lived and visited, primarily I lived in 3 places: Medellin, Cali, and Bogota. But I've traveled and I've gone to every city practically there is in Colombia.
And do you have a favorite city in Colombia?
Oh, without a doubt, Cali. Without a doubt, Cali. Cali. The reason why is Cali is what we call el capital de la salsa, which means it's the capital of salsa dancing. And the Colombians have a saying. They say, Medellin is para trabajar. Medellin is to work. Bogota is to do business. And Cali is para gozar, to dance, to drink, to party. The caleños, as they're known, are just happy-go-lucky people. It's a very unique place.
And I've heard that the most beautiful women in Colombia come from Cali.
Cali has a mixture of Indian, Arabic, white European. My ex-wife looks like she's Irish. She's a wife. And so you've got everything. You've got black girls, white girls, brown girls, and the people are just wonderful, wonderful people.
So your experience married to a Colombian and a Filipina, are there any similarities at all? Or totally different?
I think there's a lot of similarities among all women. But I would say that the Filipinos, in my opinion, the Filipinos are much more man-centered they're less westernized than South American girls.
Are they both just as feminine, in your opinion?
Yes. All that depends on the girl, but in general, yeah, I would say they are.
What about beauty? Do you find they're both just as beautiful?
Well, I guess it depends on what you like. Again, Colombia is so diverse. You can find whatever kind of girl, whatever color, whatever you like about girls physically, you can find that. You're going to get a more educated girl probably in Colombia, but with that comes a little bit more independence.
Now, a lot of, but before this video started, we were talking a little bit about age gap, and you were telling me that in Colombia, if you're over 50, forget dating a 20-year-old. But here in the Philippines, no problem. Can you talk a little bit more about age gap acceptability in Colombia?
Yeah, the girls in Colombia are like girls everywhere. If you have money and you're willing to spend it, you can pretty much get whatever you want, a 20-year-old or whatever. But if you're really looking for a wife or a serious girlfriend, if you're 50, 55 or above, it'll be very difficult for you to get a 20, 25-year-old girl, especially one that's faithful.
So what would be a realistic age? Let's say you're 55 years old. What's a realistic age that you could be?
You can get all the 30 to 35-year-old girls, 30 to 35, professional women with cars and money. You can get all those you want, and there's a reason for that. Because in Colombia, if you're over 26 or 27, you're an old maid, and if you're 30 and you're not married and don't have children, there's virtually no chance you're going to get married and have kids.
And I would say the Philippines is a little bit similar in that aspect as well, huh?
Yeah, it's like that. You get more professional women in Colombia, but if you don't speak Spanish, it's going to be difficult for you.
Yeah, so you really almost need to speak Spanish and be a little bit more realistic on the age gap.
Right, right.
Gotcha. Okay. So, as far as danger, we were talking, well, as far as danger goes, you were talking a little bit about that. Do you think the Philippines is much safer place to live?
100% safer. I never went anywhere in Colombia without a weapon. Never. I wouldn't even go to the store and get a gallon of milk 5 minutes from my house without carrying my 9mm. And when I left the house in my vehicle, I carried an M16 with me. Colombia has gone through a 100-year civil war, and between the traffickers and the paramilitaries, which are almost the same thing, there's just a propensity for violence. violence is part of their culture. You never see two Colombians fist fighting in a bar. They just send two guys on a motorcycle to your house.
Now, I have heard from several expats, though, that have lived there for a while and haven't had any problems. Do you think there's certain pockets or certain areas that are safer than?
Yeah, you're probably talking about guys that live in Medellin or live in the center part of Cali, and they don't really go very far off of the beaten trail. They probably speak Spanish and have adjusted to the life there. But street crime, just plain old street crime, is super prevalent. The same way it is in really bad parts of Manila.
Right.
It's a lot like that too. It's just more widespread in Colombia, and it's also in the province. Everybody's carrying a weapon in Colombia, everybody.
Okay. So I know that you have some really interesting stories. Today's video is just really an introduction into who you are, Chris. And we'll follow up with a part 2 and a part 3 to get some stories about. I know you have some crazy stories, but can you give us a little hint at some of the things? I know you talked about the movie Infiltrator being based on some of the people that you work with.
Yeah, I'll give you more detail next time, but I rose through the ranks with a guy by the name of Emir Abreu, and Emir was the main undercover in Operation Sea Chase, which was run by another fellow agent, a friend of mine, Bob Major. That was later made into a movie called The Infiltrator, and John Leguizamo, I believe his name is, played my partner, Emir. I was not in the movie, but I was in the movie because I was doing all the logistics and the pickups for Operation Sea Chase. And we traveled all around the country picking up millions and millions of dollars and laundering it for the Colombians. It all ended up, well, I'll save that for the next part, but it all ended up as it ended up in the movie.
Right, so I know Pablo Escobar was in this quite a bit as well, and you had some run-ins with him. Did you ever meet him personally?
No. I worked, my primary focus was on the money laundering in the U.S. We had, DEA was handling the manhunt for Escobar and all that. And also Colonel Martinez in the search block from the Colombian police. But my focus was mainly on, my expertise is money laundering, and I focused on primarily money laundering against the Escobar cartel, the Medellin cartel.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you got some really interesting stories, so we'll check back in just a couple of days and follow up with some of those stories. I know a lot of people would like to hear that. And I will show some photos of Chris in his earlier days at the end of this video here, guys, so check it out. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and check back in a few more days and we'll have some more stories with Chris. Thank you, Chris. Take care.